national interest. Government officials, led by the Vice President, Dr. Baumia, and under the guidance of President Akufo-Addo, decided to sacrifice the nation's interest by changing the key requirements of a bank guarantee to that of an insurance guarantee, thereby jeopardizing the assets of ECG and the interests of Ghanaians. The critical question is, ladies and gentlemen, whose interest was the Vice President acting on behalf of President Akufo-Addo serving when he took that reckless decision, which he knew very well, or ought to know as a professional, was inimical to the interests of Ghana? The people of Ghana were promised that investigations into the alleged fraudulent deal will be completed within 30 days. The report of the independent consultant was presented to MIDA on 3rd September. Instead of acting decisively and timeously on the report, government has resorted to deliberate delay tactics, ostensibly to buy time and shield the high-ranking government officials and cronies of the president. Ladies and gentlemen, the game plan is to let the matter die a natural death as other scandals, and still enable government create conditions for cronies of the president to profit from this clearly corrupt arrangement. Ladies and gentlemen, there is what I will call the Akufo-Addo-led state capture agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, we wish to also draw your attention to the real issues of state capture, which per our investigations lit the spark for this whole PDS inferno that now threatens the power distribution sector of Ghana. I'm sure you must have seen a rather strange letter from Honorable Ken Oforiatta to lawyer Akoto Ampao, a senior partner at the president's own law firm, who is described in the letter as, quote-unquote, chairman of the negotiations committee. I don't know which negotiations committee he chairs. In this letter, the finance minister directed Mr. Akoto Ampao to consolidate the 51% Ghanaian shareholding under a so-called special purpose vehicle to allow for other so-called Ghanaian investors to acquire shares in PDS. For the three original shareholders, i.e. GTS Power Limited, Santa Power Limited, and TG Energy Solutions Limited, this meant surrendering their shares to the new entity. To expatiate, like these three companies were picked. The persons behind them are known cronies of the president. But they were picked to share the 51% of the equity that should be reserved to Ghanaians. Whatever criteria they use to share, nobody knows. But we know that there is one thing that characterizes all of them. They are all members of the mafia. And then, after the initial heat was gone, the finance minister now comes up and says that maybe the faces that were used have already been used. Ghanaians have accepted the deal. So let us now go and do the proper sharing. So those three companies who were controlling the 51% are now directed to go and collapse their shares into a special purpose company. And in that company, they will now do the real sharing so that the senior prefects and the junior prefects will now have their shares. leaving only 11% out of the 51% to the original shareholders whose names were there. And they said, no, we won't agree. Our faces have been used already. And so luckily, 51% means controlling shares. So that company cannot take any decision without which they disagree with. So they will not allow any special purpose vehicle. They will not allow their shares to be diluted and so on. So now there is problem between one set of looters and another set of looters. I repeat, for the three original shareholders, GTS Power Limited, Santa Power Limited, and TG Energy Solutions Limited, this meant surrendering their shares to the new entity. The finance minister justified this directive on the grounds that it will protect and preserve the indigenous ownership stake in PDS. Ladies and gentlemen, we submit to you that this excuse is a fallacy. If we may ask, what is Ken Ofori-Attah's locus and authority to give such a directive? Because PDS now, with the foreign shareholders and the local Ghanaian shareholders put together, still remain a private company. And there is no indication that government has any shares in PDS. So as a finance minister, what locus do you have to write a letter directing them to surrender their shares into a new vehicle and to be apportioned in a certain way? They have not been able to answer this question. Is he a shareholder, a beneficial owner, or a conduit through which the president seeks to capture the electricity sector for personal benefit? These are questions that we will leave to them to come up to answer. Furthermore, we wish to add that the allocation of the 51% Ghanaian shareholding was approved by Parliament and cannot be modified by anybody without recourse to the legislative body. We are convinced without a shadow of doubt that the needless, baseless, and illegal attempt by Ken Ofori-Attah to restructure the shareholding of PDS is nothing but a well-orchestrated attempt by President Akufo-Addo and his relatives to appropriate the 51% Ghanaian shareholding in PDC for themselves with the objective of taking control of Ghana's power distribution sector for the next 20 years. That is up to 2039. We are reliably informed that the three original shareholders were subsequently required to dilute their respective stake in this newly formed special purpose vehicle. Per this arrangement, they would collectively see their original 51% stake in PDS reduced to a paltry 11%. The remainder of the shares is to be apportioned to cronies of the president as agents who would hold the shares in trust for him and his family. And indeed, there was a letter in circulation that has proposed the new shareholding and who will hold what. Even though the letter was intercepted before signature, and because of the scandal, it couldn't be pursued. But that leads us to know what they are thinking was as far as these things are concerned. We are reliably informed that these three original shareholders were subsequently required to dilute their respective stakes in these newly formed special purpose vehicles, as I've mentioned already. Per this arrangement, they will collectively see their 51% stake reduced to paltry 11%. The remainder of the shares is to be apportioned to cronies of the president and agents who will hold the shares in trust for him and his family. According to our unimpeachable sources, the original Ghanaian shareholders rebelled, threatened, and refused to participate in this charade. It is this defiance that outraged the Akufo-Addo faction and occasioned the suspension of the PDS concession, with the hope that the resulting pressure will force the compliance of the original shareholders. So their intention of leaking something small or showing us something small about the PDS scandal was not actually to make any changes. They thought that if they threatened the 51% shareholders sufficiently, that if you don't agree, we can cancel the whole deal and put in the people we want. Those defiant people will comply so that they will go back and do their thing the way they had planned it. But unfortunately, the plan led to something else. Their plan was to use the public outrage over the accusations to blackmail and bully the original shareholders to get in line. But the firecracker they launched has turned into a thermonuclear bomb that has exposed their wicked greed. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now conclude on the PDS. Today, against my usual practice, I'm combining two subjects. So I'm going to conclude this PDS very soon, and we will get to satisfy your expectations. I'm sure coming here, you knew why you were coming. This is just... We wish to commend the United States government for